Let's get right into it. Black Panther Wakanda Forever, my spoiler-free review. This movie makes you forget everything you know about the genre. On the surface, it is a superhero movie, but at its core, it is a story about grief, it is a story about vengeance, and it is the most emotional, well-rounded, character-driven Marvel movie to date, and the perfect way to close out Phase 4. And right at the beginning of this movie, it packs a punch. And obviously, just by the plot of this movie, it has to address the passing of King T'Challa because Chadwick Boseman passed away in 2020. And that is how the movie starts. And I love the way they handled that scene and that opening. It was pretty quiet. And I was in a movie theater that was completely full. Every seat was taken up in this theater. And as soon as the movie started and began with that, everybody got silent. That doesn't happen. And I thought that was a pretty powerful thing right at the beginning. So it starts with that, and Wakanda is now mourning the death of their leader. But at the same time, there are all these world powers starting to mess with them. Everybody's still after their vibranium, and they have to prove to everybody, hey, we're still Wakanda. We are still the most powerful nation in the entire world. Even though our king is passed, we're still here and we still mean business. But the entire movie follows the story of Shuri, her story of grief, at the same time trying to protect the country. And then you have this new threat with the villain of Namor, who I believe is the best villain since Thanos. And maybe that isn't saying a whole lot at this point. Marvel tends to have a problem when it comes to their villains being so forgettable. But Namor, it felt like that threat I wanted in a Marvel movie. You want a villain that every time they are on screen, you pay attention, and what they are trying to do and their plan in the movie has to make it feel like, oh man, your superheroes aren't going to be able to defeat this person. That is what I love in a villain. I got that feeling with Thanos. He did it the best. I got that feeling with Loki in the Avengers, and I think probably Killmonger in the original one. But now with Namor, I love that character. I love Tenoch Huerta, the way he played him. Also some representation there with a Mexican villain. So personally, I enjoyed that too. All around the board in this movie, there's so much representation, and this cast all together combined, like individually, they're all so great, but when you put all these characters together with all these actors, I think everybody has their moment to shine in this movie. From Angela Bassett, Letitia Wright, Winston Duke as M'Baku, like he really stepped it up in this movie. I know he had more of a supporting role in Black Panther, the original one. But I say he's probably one of my favorite characters in this entire movie. There are just so many strong performances that I really wasn't expecting for him to be one of my favorites, but he brought the comic relief in this movie, and not that typical cheesy superhero comic relief that you and we've all kind of come to know and expect from Marvel movies. It was just funny, and I love their camaraderie in this movie. Whether or not they're all actual friends in real life, it really plays off on screen. So when they are joking around, and there's some levity in this movie, which the movie all around is pretty heavy, but there are some moments for comedy, there are some moments for some laughter, which I think was needed, but it never feels cheesy, it never feels forced. It just feels like they all have such great on-screen chemistry that it comes natural. So it really takes it to the next level and doesn't feel like a superhero movie at all, doesn't feel like a Marvel movie. And I think that was really set whenever the first Black Panther came out, and it was so critically acclaimed and loved by fans. This one had a lot of expectation going into it, and it was almost like, how would you even live up to that first one? But I really think they nailed it here. So I think anybody who is a fan of the original, you'll be a fan of this one. I don't think you would love Black Panther and see this one and be like, meh, not for me. So if you love the first one, I think you'll love this one even more. The weird criticism I have is a really unfair one, and it's obviously nothing that they could do, but you do feel the missing presence of Chadwick Boseman as Black Panther. And it's just unfortunate he is no longer here. And there was something inside of me that I was like, they're going to bring him back. But you realize that no, like that's real life. He is actually not here anymore. And I think sometimes when you think about celebrities and actors, it feels like they live on this entirely different planet. But that really grounded it for me, knowing that he's really not here anymore. Like, I know he passed away, I know he is no longer here, but it made this weird connection in my brain of, oh, this isn't all just superhero escapism. Like, there's some real life here. So that was a weird thing that I wasn't expecting to feel. And you want him to be in this movie so bad. So I can only imagine how it felt for them coming back and working on this movie without him. And it felt like in some of these scenes, and I know they've said this in interviews too, they were dealing with their grief. I know they're playing their characters here, but they are dealing also with their real life grief. So I think as fans, as we watch these movies, that'll probably set in with you a little bit during this movie when you just want Chadwick Boseman to be there. But I think going back to everybody else's performance, I think they stepped it up even more so to elevate all these other characters. And what this entire movie does is so much character development. And I will admit, that 2 hour and 40-minute runtime plus, you feel it, especially about halfway through the movie. And it's easy to say, like, oh, the movie is too long, they could cut this and cut that. And, you know, I generally do sometimes say that when it comes to a movie this long. But I think it's all that character development and all of those things building and fleshing out these characters. It's the journey they go through. And I think that runtime is warranted. You could be nitpicky and say, you got to cut this, cut that. Yeah. But I think I'm never going to look back on this movie and think, if that movie was just a little bit shorter, I would have enjoyed it more. No, because this is a movie I'm going to rewatch again, and time again, and will still enjoy. And when I think about any major criticisms I've had while watching this movie, there really wasn't anything. And what I loved about it so much is that it gave me that feeling again of being excited while watching a superhero movie. I wanted them to get to the action, and they did. I wanted certain things to happen, and they did. And it just had me so invested from the very opening scene to the very ending. Even the mid-credit scene didn't feel cheesy and forced like sometimes those mid-credit scenes are, which I get a little bit tired and annoyed of those from time to time. But this one, even that was handled perfectly. So how would it rank among all the other films in Phase 4 now that this one closes out Phase 4? Easily the best. There's just no comparison to this one. It feels like it's on an entirely different level when it comes to how it ranks to every other Marvel movie made. It's easy top 10. I don't think it's top 5, but it's an easy top 10. There are just so many now at this point. It almost feels arbitrary to try to rank them all at this point. So I'll just focus on Phases. Easily the best film in Phase 4. So if I had to give this movie a rating, I think it's a perfect Marvel movie. Even outside of being Marvel, I think it's just a perfect movie because of the themes in this, because of the representation, because of the villain, because of the lesson learned after watching this movie. There's nothing that I could say that would take away from that. So I think it is a perfect movie, and it is my only 5 out of 5 out of the entire year. I give Black Panther Wakanda Forever 5 out of 5 vibranium suits. I can't wait to do the spoiler version of this review so I can get into the mid-credit scene and some of the other surprises in this movie, but I think it's one you have to see in theaters. Watching this on the big screen and a crowd of people really elevated the feeling while watching this movie, and there weren't any VFX problems like Marvel has kind of been letting slip through the cracks lately. Everything was perfect down to the very minute detail. There you go.